All right, so we're going to make our box again, but we're going to use one of the most powerful tools in Fusion 360, which is this parametric design, which basically we click on the little FX icon at the top. It allows us to then set parameters. You can think about them as variables. The way that we have to name them is for computer programmers. You can use there'd be no spaces in your name, so you have to put all together in either camel case or underscores. But basically, I hit a parameter and I'm going to add. Uh, a length, a width, a height. I can do a stock thickness, and I can specify what those values are. So I'm just going to set up my variables here. And then what we'll see is when we define things in terms of those variables, those parameters, we have the ability to adjust those parameters, and then our drawing hopefully will adjust accordingly. And it gives us some flexibility if we're not sure on final dimensions to just really quickly go back and adjust values to see and have our model update. So just setting up the values. Again, I have my width, length, and then my stock height, and I've set those all together. And when I'm ready, I can hit OK, and I can always come back and add and adjust these down the road if I want to. Okay, so now we're just going to create the box like we've done in the past. I'm going to start to create a rectangle, but instead of typing the dimensions, I'm going to start typing the text that I had before. So I'm going to type for box width and length, and it'll start showing me which values are available to me. I'm going to extrude that up by the stock height. And now what I've done is I've created a box, but if I was to change those parameters, I can go back and adjust them. Let me move out of the way so we can see what's happening. So if I make it a different value, you're going to see that my drawing actually updates itself. So now I'd have a different body without having to create anything differently in my actual sketch. It will actually automatically update those values, which again is incredibly powerful as you're designing things that you don't necessarily know what they'll be, or if you want different iterations, different versions of things, is a really easy way to adjust them. So we've created our base. We're going to create another sketch. We'll just do it on top of the bottom component. I'm going to use a rectangle to come across, and we'll specify again that's going to be our thickness, and then we're going to specify that value. We're going to pull to that corner. So we're not going to use our parameter, but we're going to actually set it to the corner of that value, and then we're going to extrude it up to get our side. And so again, you start typing to pull in what our parameter is. What we're going to see here is as we set it uh, and we adjust it. So if we were to change, we're going to actually add in a box height here variable. So again, I can go back and change it to what I want. So I'm going to put that in as a value, make it 5 inches. And now I can use it. I'm going to extrude that up to that box height. There we go. And I want to make sure I'm not joining it to the bottom, that it is it's been added. So I'm going to double click on my timeline and change that to be a new body and hit OK. Now what we're going to do is let's see what happens when I look at my value. And I can see my box height, right, is still going to be what I set it as a variable. If I change these values though, let's see what happens to that piece because I just snapped it to the endpoint that was current. So if I change my dimension to 12, you can see that that side did not stay with the other side. All right. So when I go back and I want to adjust that sketch, we want to do it differently so that so that we can edit. So I go to my timeline, and instead of snapping it to that side, I'm going to dimension from that side. I'm going to set it to be a parameter value. So I'm going to set it to be the appropriate parameter value. And now you see it's automatically adjusted that length. And now when I change my parameters, so if I go back into the parameters there and I change it back, we'll see that now it's dynamically linked. So those have the same parameter that drives them. And so if I change that parameter, they'll both adjust. So we're going to do a very similar thing. We're going to move and copy this to the other side, and we're going to do a front and a back, and then we're going to see what we have at the end. And hopefully we have a box where we can change pretty much any dimension that we want to go from there. So we have create a copy. I'm going to do a point to point where I'm going to take that point, move it to the other side, make sure I have it create a copy, and then I'm going to figure out that distance between them, and then put in a front piece and a back piece. So I have those bodies that are there, which is good. So I have those as different pieces, and then I'm going to I'm going to turn one of them off so I can see that piece, that body easier. I'm going to draw a rectangle by going across by my thickness and then down to the edge. And once I have the correct dimensions on my rectangle, I can extrude it to be the right distance across to make that fit. So there's my rectangle. I finish my sketch and I turn the body back on. And what I'm going to do is select the profile that I want and I'm going to extrude it to the object. So that will go to the other side. If that side changes, then it will adjust as well. I click new body and hit OK. And then we do the same thing where I want that just to be the same piece in the front and the back. It's easy to adjust at this point. Let's make sure it's still working. One thing when you're doing this is to not build the whole thing and then try to adjust at the end. As you're going through it, make sure that your adjustments are working. That way, if you have something that's snapped to the wrong component or you haven't linked it correctly, you can adjust it in the moment as opposed to trying to figure it out after the fact. So we're going to take that body and we want to move a point. So I want that point and zoom in. I hope that I can grab it. That point, create a copy, and I want it to go to the end right there and hit OK. And now we've created a box that's parametrically driven, which means hopefully we can adjust all of our values and have the box actually maintain that shape. There it goes. It gets longer. It can get wider. I can hopefully change the stock thickness. That's a really important piece as you start to take lumber that you don't necessarily know what the final dimensions are going to be. So there you go. We made a parametrically driven box that we can adjust to be really any size we want it to be.